So, are we about to have some kind of collapse? Or is it ridiculous to be prepping for something and we'll all be perfectly fine? We'll be taken care of by spirit, by consciousness, by whoever. We'll be rescued. Kumbaya. Or should you like or should you subscribe? Polarities. Polarities. We are in a world of extremes, of polarities. I like to call it binary thinking because it's not even that it's different polarities. It's really like this one or this, zero, one or zero, one or zero, nothing in between. And this is the problem with the digital age, but it's also a problem in society and for those who want higher consciousness and a better way of being. It's a big problem. We can start with computers, just briefly, so you understand what the problem is. Computers fundamentally operate on binaries, on ones and zeros. In and out, through and through, they operate on that. And people for years tried to make AI, artificial intelligence, based upon these binary logical systems, true or false, yes or no, and they failed miserably. They've been trying for a lot of years to do that. What finally worked to make AI that's like halfway usable, love it or hate it, that actually does something useful for some people at least, that even though it's based on a binary system, it doesn't really use that binary approach. It uses a much more nuanced approach. It's called an artificial neural network, where different pieces of that network have different states based upon these internal number systems where a thing can be arranged from like 0 to 256, or if you have a higher fidelity, from 0 to 16,464 or some number like that. Right? Binary based numbers, but nonetheless, inside the neural network, it's representing things not as yes or no, it's representing things on a gradation, on a scale. And guess what? If you're trying to do AI, it works way better on a gradation, on a scale. It can get nuance, it can get subtlety, it can pick things up. Whereas AI based upon ones and zeros hasn't worked. So maybe that's a lesson for us in society, especially again for those of us who choose to walk a path of trying to find maybe a little bit more spirit, maybe a little bit more consciousness, despite, yes, I get it, it's messy out there. Things seem very broken. But this came to mind in a discussion about that very brokenness. Someone that I sometimes follow had a video, several people have had videos about how the month that I'm recording this, February, is supposed to be potentially, energetically, a really big month with a lot of things happening. And there was a debate in the comment section of one of these because one of the people said, oh, I don't see any economic issues. I see political issues. Other people have been talking about economic issues, and I've been paying attention to economic issues. And as of the time I'm recording this, it looks like it's there under the hood. The plumbing is broken. There are a lot of leaks happening at the moment. And so there was this debate in the comments where one person was like, so I'm going to be just perfectly fine. And then there were other people saying, maybe not. And then there was another person commenting, oh yeah, in my town, there are people like getting gas in gas cans and preparing, because they think the end is nigh and they want to be prepared. And this is a perfect example of how we fall into this trap of polarity. It's either the end is nigh, the end of our financial system is nigh, and it's going to be doom and gloom and all of that stuff, or la 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 la, kumbaya, it's all wonderful, don't panic, don't worry, don't whatever. And anybody who is doing that stuff is automatically panicking. Why does it have to be panic or not panic? Kumbaya or total doomsday? It's not any of those things. Whatever happens in real life is never any of those things. I know that in movies and in fiction, we like to do that. We like to pretend that life is actually like that, but life is not like that. in real life. There's always nuance and gradation, and there are different things that happen in different places. Some places it's much worse than other places. If you look at the Great Depression, it wasn't like everybody was out on the streets. Now, some people were greatly affected by that, but other people were just barely affected by that. So it's not like life operates according to our binaries. It doesn't. Those are just things that we impose on it artificially. So I want to go just a little bit deeper conceptually. I know sometimes I might lose people, but hey, if I lose you on the conceptual stuff, that's okay, because that's what I'm here to talk about, is like this deeper conceptual stuff at the basis of our reality, our consciousness, our spirit. And a fundamental to our experience as human beings is this idea of contrast, that we learn through contrasting things. We learn through the difference between light and dark, between up and down, between left and right. And it's not just those very simple things. In all of our life, there are contrasts. When you're teaching somebody something, and I've done a lot of teaching, it's always easier to teach somebody by drawing a contrast of here's what it is, but here's what it is not. And by drawing that contrast, people learn so much more quickly than if you just sit there and say, here, blah, 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 here are all the facts, here are all the details about what it is, without ever defining what it's not, using contrast. This is how we relate to our world, through this exploration of contrast. And there are many different dimensions of contrast. What I mean is that one dimension of contrast is hot versus cold, temperature. That's one dimension of contrast. Another is light versus dark, and so on and so forth. And there are thousands, perhaps millions of dimensions of contrast that we can experience in our lives here. That's all well and good. It's how we explore. But what happens for some reason in our world and in our society is that we like to then take those just basic contrasts, which we can all choose. Do we want to explore the warm side and go live, in a very warm place, for example, or live in a cold place where there are winters and snow and skiing? All well and good. But let's take that example. Then we all get into debates about it. Well, my side is the right side. Like all you people who live in cold climates where it snows 6 months out of the year, you're crazy. There's something wrong with that, right? Or for somebody who's on that side, well, all you people who live on the beach where it's and humid and hot and muggy, I can't handle that. And the latter point is more what I would say if I was willing to and wanting to engage in polarities. I don't. I try to avoid them because they don't help us. There was another debate in a comment section on a video that I made about capitalism. And there was pretty much this thing where I don't even remember what I was saying in the video. It was something about how, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater when it comes to capitalism. And there were pretty much a series of comments that were like, capitalism is bad, period, end of story. And I was like, wait, so you just want to throw everything out and start over with nothing and make all the same mistakes that people up to this point, for thousands of years have tried many different systems and made a lot of mistakes with those systems, instead of wanting to actually figure out what is wrong with this capitalism that has run a little bit amok, which I totally agree. It has run amok. It doesn't pay attention to people first. It doesn't pay attention to consciousness. And I'll make a whole other video on this, but capitalism has some very negative effects as practiced right now. Does that mean we just throw the whole thing out? That's like saying, well, my computer has a virus, so I'm just going to go throw it out the window because viruses are bad and therefore computers are bad because my computer has one. So let's drop it off a 5-story building and break it. Okay, but that doesn't fix our problems. When we're in polarity, we can't see even what the problems really are. We're we're blind to that idea that there's some nuance here. Maybe there's some subtlety in some of the things. And so instead, what happens is we get into isms. Like I was thinking about left versus right. On the left, there's like Marxism and socialism, and I can't think of other isms for the left right now. On the right, there's unbridled capitalism. There's Marx, or not Marxism. On the right, there's fascism and, things like that. And okay, great. So like, we don't want fascism. At least I don't. So should we just immediately jump to Marxism? I mean, then we're just in another ism. And whenever we're in an ism, it's still us versus them. It's not us coming together in any sort of unity, just trying to solve the problems. And until we get over this way of being where we have to say that like our way is right in terms of the binaries and everybody else's way is not, we are feeding the monster. We are feeding the matrix. We are feeding the polar storm. I have many different analogies for this because basically, let's take the polar storm verbiage. When hurricanes, take the example of hurricanes. Hurricanes don't just feed off of simply one temperature. They feed off of a gradient of temperatures that keep the storm going. And that's what creates tornadoes and other very destructive storms, is when you have a big temperature differential that causes flows of air to move between. And it causes a nasty rotating polar storm, literally, in a hurricane or in a tornado. So this is exactly what we do in society and what we have been doing for a long time. And we feed all of our energy into keeping the storm going because they're wrong, I'm right. They're wrong, I'm right. And they're all over there. No, you're wrong. And I'm right. You're wrong. I'm right. And this is something that people who want to do negative things, want to take control in ways of our attention and our consciousness, they keep our attention off of fixing the problems because we're also busy fighting over stuff. Now, there are some groups that are worse at this than others. I think there are some groups that really, really go into this. And my belief is that this is not just an accident, that there is darkness, dark stuff, dark forces, dark energy that actually supports this distraction that we've all gotten stuck in of us versus them and this polar thinking instead of practical thinking. Because if we're all distracted and angry at one another and fighting and constantly whatever, we're not going to fix the problems and we're all going to be effing miserable. Do we want to all be effing miserable forever? I don't. But that's what we've created. Now, again, I'm not telling you that there aren't like truly bad or negative people out there. There clearly are. And I'm not telling you there aren't good people with very high intention and high consciousness who are trying to make the world a better place. There are. Those contrasts exist. But there's a difference between getting into a fight over it versus just saying, no, I don't want that. Like if we as a society who truly just said, no, we don't want a certain kind of depravity that we've seen recently in the news. If we don't want that depravity to be happening, we say no to that. It's not a fight. It's just no. We're not going to tolerate that. We're not going to accept that. We're not going to condone that in any way. It's just a hard no. But it's not a fight. There's a difference in that sense. When you get into a fight with certain kinds of people, certain kinds of enemies who are on the other side of the polarity, you actually feed them energy. So for people who aren't a fan of the current administration in the US, as of when I'm recording this, then you have to understand that if you are in an active fight, constantly paying attention, constantly pushing against, you're potentially feeding them because that's what they feed off of. That's what they want. They want the fight. They want the polar storm. They want you distracted. Whereas if you just say, yeah, no, I mean, we actually have laws against that stuff, and we're going to stand up for it. And we're going to have boundaries, and we're going to say no. And the interesting thing is, this is much more about where your energy is than your actual actions. Because let's say you are somebody who believes that it's important, that is your duty, you want to go protest against some of the stuff that's happened. You can go protest with a sense of fight. Yeah, I'm going to fight these people. I'm going to provoke them. I'm going to, really hit them hard. Or you can protest with a sense of, we're just saying no. We don't tolerate this. We don't condone this. We don't accept this. We are saying we're going a different direction. And no, thank you. It's like when I have an analogy when, let's say you see some cockroaches coming out of the walls in your kitchen. Do you get into cockroaches, they're the worst thing ever. I'm going to go to war with the cockroaches. I think there's some humorous movies about things like that. I think I remember a movie, Caddyshack, that, somebody was at a war with the gophers, right? And how did that work out for the person who went to war with the gophers? It didn't work very well. So if you have something like a cockroach problem or a mosquito problem, whatever, some kind of problem, and by the way, I think we have a cockroach problem right now. If you have the cockroach problem, then you figure out, how do I just simply get rid of these cockroaches? You get to work on focusing on the solution, not, they're bad, I'm good, they're bad, the cockroaches are really, really bad, I'm good. See how good I am? See how awesome I am? But they're really bad. The cockroaches, they are so bad. Can you believe how bad the cockroaches are? Let's make some videos about how bad the cockroaches are. And more videos, and more discussion, and more debate. Oh, and then the cockroaches did that. And, oh, wow. Can you believe how bad they are? Or you can spend the energy of, how do we get rid of this? How do we get rid of this problem? Simply and practically. Let's just be done with those cockroaches in our kitchen. I think you get my gist. So this doesn't benefit us. And, these polarities are not actually real. A lot of us think they're real, like that I'm good and they're bad, whatever my good is and whatever their bad is. I'm not saying that it's all relative in the sense of there isn't some, higher standard for being and lower standard for being. I believe in that. But at the same time, we make up these polarities. We really do. And that feeds the polar storm. And this is how it keeps us all distracted and keeps us feeding this matrix that wants us disempowered, that wants us focused and distracted on, with the wrong things, rather than being empowered and taking our own sovereignty back as human beings, as conscious human beings, and tuning into higher levels of spirit. That is truly how we get out of this mess, is understanding that engaging in polar storms just feeds the storms. It just feeds the whole thing, and it drains our energy in the process. Personally, I don't like my energy being drained by that. I would instead rather fix the problem and move on. So hopefully that helps you with some perspective about this. And my motto is break the binary. And I'm not just talking about gender. Break the binary in all the different ways. Break the frickin' binary. Haven't you had enough of all this binary stuff? And of not just getting down to work and fixing the problem? I mean, maybe it's something about me being in Gen X that, we were just like, we've learned to just fix problems and move on. Like that's how we grew up because I don't know. It was something about the upbringing of Gen X. You can go watch videos, good or bad. Gen X has its problems, but there's a real practicality. So let's break that binary and move on and stop being so. I mean, I shouldn't tell you what to do. That's what I choose to do. So you can choose what you want to do. We have free will. But I encourage you that if you do choose to break the binary, get out of these binary polar storms, that life will actually get easier. All right. So let's start fixing things. That's what I do want. I want us to fix things. There are a lot of messes right now. It's time to get down to work. Fix some stuff. Solve some bug problems. All right. That's it for now. I forgot again to mention there's always that like. Do you like or do you subscribe? Do you want to make it into polarity or could you do both? I guess you could do neither. But it would certainly be nicer and support if you wanted to do both. I would love it. It helps the channel get out there. It helps me bring this message of practical, grounded, even, quote, scientific spirituality and consciousness. And I think the world could use a little bit of that right now. At least I feel like I'm here to share it, and I'll keep sharing it for as long as there are at least a few people around. So I hope to see you there. I look forward to your comments.